my farmer buddy gives me permission to hunt the big farm. He says, "Hey, there's a buck hit by a car over here." And I was like, "Oh God, are you serious?" So I got over there again. I asked the guy, I was like, "Was it a doe or a buck?" And he was like, "It was a buck." I was like, "Was it a big buck?" He's like, "I don't know. It looked big to me. I'm not a hunter or whatever." We went and looked, and we never found that deer. The next morning, I'm getting ready to go to work. I pull into the farm. I was going to go just look in the fields to see what buck it was, because there was 5, 6 other bucks around too. And so I'm like, man, I got to know. And I pull in and I see a deer bedded next to the tree that I got winded out of on the second day. So I threw my binos on him, and it was Woody. I look on my phone and I'm like, I got the win. So I'm like, you know what? Who cares? What do I have to lose? I put my stuff on, grabbed my bow, binos, and I started easing down that fence row. Crawled to probably 60 or 70 yards of him, and then realized he had a doe with him. And then I was like, oh God, but they're both facing away from me. So I just kept easing, and I got within like 28 yards. And I was like, you know what? It's now or never. So I shot him laying in his bed.
Lights, camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera!
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
The Exodus Podcast,
Your source for all things whitetail.
Justin, how's it going this morning?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. We were just talking. It's kind of everyone's licking their wounds after a couple crazy months and getting back in the swing of things with life. And you've been hard at it for end of September to when did you end up notching your tag there in Ohio?
November 29th.
It's a lot of sits. And I want to dive into that specific deer, but you sat 41 sits for that deer and 20 some different trees.
Yep.
So
on 5 different properties.
We'll just dive right into it. So did that deer just have a huge range, or was he just extremely unpredictable, or?
He had a huge range. Yeah, a buddy of mine who hunts across the road from some of this stuff too, like every once in a while, he just texts me, and thank God he was tagged out, because he was like, "Hey, Woody's over on me. He was on me last night." I'm like, "Geez, are you kidding me?" So then it was like, I'm like, man, like I'd have plans or something like that to go in to hunt him or whatever. And I'm like, he's like, "Yeah, he's over on me right now." And I'm like, well, there goes that set, because I was thinking I was going to do this morning or evening or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it was just, first time I got pictures of him was in 2019. Mm-hmm. And I thought he was a 2.5-year-old. He could have been a 3.5-year-old. I don't know. I'm going to get him aged. He had 17 points and had a wide frame. And I remember the first time I seen him, he reminded me of years ago, it was either Gene and Barry Wenzel that killed a giant 200-something inch deer in Iowa that they called Woody. And it reminded me of that deer. And so I just kind of, in my head, just kind of started calling him Woody. I didn't tell anybody. I was just kind of calling, like one of those things. I had pictures of him all summer, and I never hunted back there that year because, well, the deer that I was after wasn't on that particular farm, and there was a big bully buck back there, and he was back there. So I never hunted on that farm that year. The only person that hunted back there that year was Troy Pottinger. He came out that year during late season, and I said, "Hey man, see this deer? Do not shoot this one. Like whatever you do." I said, "You shoot that bully buck." I said, "But please lay off. He's going to be tempting because he's big."
17 scoreable points, big frame.
Yeah. So I'm like, "Please don't." And he's like, "Nope." And he never seen him or whatever. But 2020, I had cameras everywhere trying to locate him. Never got one picture of him. Never found his sheds. Never seen him from the stand. No summertime scouting. Like vanished. Nothing. So I honestly thought there's a lot of guys that hunt in that area. I just thought he probably got killed. He's a big buck, a lot of guys would have got that deer. I'm like, man. And he was young, so I figured, man, he's probably just running everywhere and got killed. I was bummed after that season as far as that goes, because I was like, dang, man, he could have been a giant.
And so 2020, nothing, no murmurs, no sign of life. And then 2021, he showed back up, or you relocated him? Well, no, Was it, didn't you think was it 2021 where you thought he may have gotten shot? I just read on your Instagram. Was that 2021 or 2020?
That would have been 2020. But I wasn't convinced of it. A buddy had sent me pictures and he goes, "Hey, I think this is that deer." Because he hunts right by that farm too.
Mhm.
And he was the one that was actually getting pictures of him this year over there. He sent me pictures and I'm like, man, it does. I could see where you would think that, but I just for some reason don't believe that's him, because this deer to me in the pictures looked like a 5 or 6 year old kind of buck.
Mhm.
And I'm like, there's no way that deer's looking like that, with that big, dark, cherry red forehead and big, huge shoulders and neck. I'm like, I don't know. Because this deer at best would have been maybe a 3 or 4 year old buck. So I don't think that deer would look like that. But then at times I'm like, yeah, maybe it is him, So I wasn't sure at that point.
Mhm. And then so going into 2021, you just had cameras out, and where and when did you end up relocating that deer or confirming he was alive in 2021?
In 2021, I had cameras all over again, and I wasn't picking him up anywhere. I wasn't seeing any bean fields, nothing like that anywhere. A friend of mine who hunts a farm close by, because I kind of know all the guys in the area, really. And he said, "Hey, just want to let you know that we lost permission
Hmm.
on our piece over there." And they'd hunted her for years and years, but it sold. He said, "So I might as well let the cat out of the bag." And I said, "About what?" And he goes, "I got a giant on trail camera." He sent it over to me. And as soon as I looked at it, I was like, "Man, is that Woody?" And I'm looking at it. And when he first sent it over to me, he said, "You know that deer?" I said, "No," because I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And I was like, is that him? And then after I went back and looked at some 2019 stuff, I was like, man, I think that is him. After a couple days and knowing exactly where he got trail cam pictures of the deer, because he said, no, he dropped a pin and showed me exactly where his cameras were in that woodlot. He even told me, he goes, well, good luck getting permission. He's like, because some of the people around there, he's like, they don't let anybody hunt. So I was like, oh, okay. So I've heard that before. And
Does it
then
scare you?
no, actually never does, because sometimes it's completely the opposite of that. And that's exactly what it was in this case. I went over. Oh yeah. I mean, a couple days later, I was hitting every door around around that entire section there.
Mhm.
And first two places I went to, they're like, yeah, no problem. I'm like, okay, cool. Got permission. And actually I'm pretty good friends with the people now. They're always trying to get me to bring my son over to go fishing. They're awesome. And they even, I even got the green light to even put food plot in on the one piece.
That is a 180 from, they don't let anyone hunt.
Yeah. The one piece is only like 25 acres, and the other piece is like maybe 10 that adjoins it. So there's like, about 35 acres or whatever right there. And so
you pretty much had solo permission on those?
Yep. They told me both landowners told me they've never let anybody hunt.
So what's your pitch like? Are you just a trustworthy looking guy, or what's that conversation look like?
I just knock on the door. Here's the one thing, you need to catch people like doing yard work or something like that, not just like sitting in their house. And I've seen them out there in their yard, and then I stopped. And I don't know. I just run of the mill BS, and I live, right in the area. Mm-hmm. So there's that conversation, and I said, yeah, and I can't remember if I asked him to hunt or maybe just to run, if it'd be all right if I run a couple of cameras. Sometimes too, I just tell people, I'm like, look, if you don't mind, I'd like to run a couple of cameras, and I'm really not into the rest of the deer. I'm just into one deer. Mm-hmm. One specific deer, to be honest. Some people are I think they're like, really? How do you know the difference? How can you tell the difference between one deer and, so all those conversations and everything else. And I think that's all I did. I think I just was running some cameras or whatever. They got to know me, I got to know them. And then I think there's a level of comfort that kind of comes with that later. Yeah. And gives you the green light to hunt.
Well, it's a lot easier to get permission to run cameras than can I actually go hunt and carry, like, depending on what they think, like carry a weapon around, and I put up air quotes for that, versus take pictures of wildlife, put a camera on a tree. Like, completely different.
And I think too that they like the fact that, I was just a bow hunter. I think that, they knew that I wouldn't be out there running around and, with a gun and stuff like that, because they're small properties and stuff like that. And they're both older people.
So you ended up getting permission on the 2 adjoining parcels that just sold then, where the deer was.
Yes.
Is kind of where the story's at there. And then where you can give away as much as you want, but from where you originally had him in 2019 and where he was in 2021, where you got that pin, how far was that? Was it really far, like a mile or two?
No.
Half mile?
No, probably half mile maybe.
Okay, so not
Like
far
that.
at all.
No, not for a deer.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. No, not far at all. But I just knew, like, I did not have him figured out at all, at that point, like, of where he was actually like relocated at. And I know probably one of the reasons too that deer relocated, it goes back to the bully bucks. I had that bully buck back there for all those years. And that's a big farm over there. I mean, it's a lot of wide open fields and stuff like that. It's 190 acres, but he dominated that farm over there.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, drove a lot of good deer out of there.
There seems to be different opinions on bully bucks. So you 100% subscribe to bucks that are territorial and keep younger, potentially higher potential bucks off the farm. Just keep them running off.
I have trail cam videos of that bully buck walking out of a thicket. I got 2 or 3 trail cam videos of that bully buck walking out of the thicket of other bucks feeding in a field, and he walks out snort wheezing and running at them. So if you're a young deer, no matter what headgear that you got on your head,
a big body buck coming charging it.
This thing's huge. I mean, this just a giant, 6-7-year-old kind of deer. He's got one great big fork on one side and one nice side on the other. And he just comes out and he's chasing them all over the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got a feeling that deer probably kept that deer out of there.
Sure. That's interesting. Did that deer end up dying? The bully buck that you're referring to?
No, he's still alive today. But
so
he relocated.
How far did he relocate, or what do you think caused that?
Probably a mile, and I'm not sure. Me and a buddy that hunts that farm over there, he was getting pictures of him this year, and the deer has to be 10 or 11 years old now. Mm-hmm. And he was over there, and then, like, once they shed their velvet, he disappeared, and we haven't seen him since.
That's so strange.
So hopefully he died.
Someone took out the bully buck. So as this deer relocated, do you think because of just he maybe wanted a little bit more seclusion, or didn't want to get beat up feeding in the food plot or ag fields? So as you are kind of piecing together these parcels and developing a plan, what does that look like as it transpires? I assume a lot of cameras. Are you summer glassing for this buck? Did you ever see him feeding in the beans or anything like that in the summer?
Never saw him feeding in the beans, and never got one single picture of him on those 2 new pieces I added.
Really?
In a state that you can run bait on cameras, and we're talking not very far away from where he was getting pictures of that deer, and I never got one single picture. There was a 10 that was running with him, and I got pictures of that deer. But I never got pictures of him.
So as you're developing a plan, maybe that's somewhat beneficial, because you can kind of X out those areas to some regard and say, okay, well, he must be going, let's say those farms are the east. Well, his home range must kind of end there. Is he going west of there or north of there or south of there? Was that what your thought process was?
Yeah. And the problem, if he's heading west or if he's heading south, is on ground that I have no access to. And I thought maybe he was staying out on a couple fence rows over there, and then working his way back into that wood lot. And so he was never working my way. And that's the only thing I could figure out. And I mean, I waited all year, I kept waiting. And I was like, well, maybe once they shed velvet, then that's when I'll start to get pictures of him. Whether it's on one of those 2 pieces or back, on the other bigger farm where I used to get pictures of him on 19, but nothing. I mean, And then, next thing I know, season's starting. Well, I'm not just going to sit back and you know, hope, pray for a ghost to show up and spend my whole season not hunting.
Hmm.
So, I knew of him, wasn't getting pictures of him. So the biggest buck that I had pictures on, I started hunting him. So
How often do you have to do something like that? Like, obviously, to your point, you can't hunt a ghost, and then it's just kind of a power ranking list of this is the biggest killable deer that I know about, so I'm gonna go try to kill him. Is that kind of how your season is for the most
yeah,
part?
yeah, I did. Yeah, quite a bit actually. Because there a couple of years ago, I knew of 3 bucks and all three in completely different areas, all three in different counties actually. And I thought all three of them were over 170. And the one that was the most killable off the very beginning of the season, he was just red hot right on the early part of the season. Well, I'm not going to not go chase that deer. It's a huge deer. Um, and even though the other ones were I'll bet you the other two were probably in the 180s.
Wow.
Well, I know they were because they both got killed.
Uh-huh.
And so I went after the other one. He was the smallest of the three, and I killed him in the first week of season. And then the other two ended up getting killed, and one of them was 181 and 183. That's what the guys had told me.
Hmm.
And they looked it. I mean, they're huge. They're huge bucks. But yeah, no. So but I have. There's a lot of times too. I get pictures of big deer during the summer, and as soon as that velvet comes off, it's like you never see him again
Yeah.
until next year during velvet.
Next summer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we're kind of jumping around here a little bit, but in those
yeah.
instances where you do get a giant summer velvet buck on a farm, are you like going out a mile or two radius all the way around and trying to figure out where the heck he went?
Yep.
Do you
Yeah.
have success with that, or is it kind of just a crapshoot?
I think it's a crapshoot,
Hmm.
because well, and I've been down that road too of what of find. I have found them before, but then you have to get access,
Sure.
and I mean everybody's hunting every 5 acres around here anymore.
Yeah.
So I mean, if there's anything to hunt, it's almost like it's a rarity that somebody's not hunting it
Hmm.
because it used to be a lot easier to get the permission for bow hunting, but since the introduction of crossbows, that's all changed.
Yeah. It really has, because
Yep.
it just opens up just a lot more hunters in general. Okay, so as we're jumping around here, but as the season progresses, you don't have any pictures of them in the summer, and you're not getting them on the farms that you ended up getting permission on. So how are you developing this plan throughout the season? Because obviously you made a ton of adjustments. Uh, so kind of walk through why you had to make that many adjustments, what was causing those adjustments, and kind of just transgress through the season there.
So season got rolling. There was only so much permission that I could get, and I felt like uh, did as much as I could as far as like trying to locate him and trying to get access to the properties that were around there. I kind of just let my cameras do the work, and just on the evenings that I wasn't hunting, uh, I would just drive around and scout and glass. And as season rolled around, I got onto this big non-typical, and I just I he kind of got under my skin, and we got going back and forth, and I still at that point. Now we're the late October, still no pictures of Woody. And then as we got into now it's November, and I'm planning on going out to Illinois,
Mhm.
and so I finally shoot the non-typical that I was after on November 4th. It's like November 3rd to 5th, something like that. But I think it was on the 4th. And so then that evening, I was sitting in a truck with a good friend of mine, waiting on another buddy to come over because I'd shot this non-typical. And we're sitting in the truck, and my phone goes off, my cell cams, and I pull it up, and it's him. He finally showed up. That night, the evening that I shot my buck.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just sitting in a truck waiting, and I turned my phone around, showed my buddy. I was like, look at this. He's like, really? He's going to show up on the night, like, you shoot your buck? I'm like, yeah. So, and then he showed up. He didn't show up on the new spots. He showed up on the big farm where he was
you
in
had him in
2019.
2019. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
like you said,
didn't
that
even
bully
show
buck
up
left.
over there. Yeah, that bully buck left, and I knew that because I'd seen him a couple of times in the morning driving to hunt. I seen the bully buck over in that section. I seen him getting ready to cross the road one morning.
Mhm.
And then my buddy was like, yeah, that deer's staying over on me now. I'm like, good, you can go deal with him for a while. He said, he's like, I'm not gonna deal with him very long. He goes, I'll take a friend over there, and that'd be glad to wrap their tag around that thing.
Uh-huh.
Um,
So yeah, November 4th, he shows up on camera, and then so what happens from there?
So at that point, I was like, I'm just gonna load a farm up with cameras and just keep an eye on it, you know. So that's what I did. Then in December, he shows up holding his back leg up, and he's got like an injury. He had like an injury up high, it looks like, and then something going on with his hoof. So I was like, man, that is not good. And so I didn't know if he'd been shot or hit by a car or what had happened to him. So then couple of probably a week or so later, he shows back up. He has no rack on his head at all. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm like, man, I don't know if he's gonna make it. But so I got out there immediately and started looking for his sheds. But I was really dumping like a lot of supplemental feed and stuff like that to him, and like just any and everything like I could possibly get into him.
Mhm.
And then with us being able to bait and put minerals out and all that kind of stuff, I was already starting all that,
Mhm.
you know, because I just thought, man, I gotta, you know, try to get him through the winter. And he was all over it. But I looked, well, I kept track of it uh on Onyx, and I think I walked like 15 or 20 miles
Looking for the
looking
sheds.
for looking for those sheds. I never found them.
So random.
Never found them. And
Uh-huh.
I thought the whole time, I'm like, if I can find these sheds, then I really got his area nailed
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But you know, it could have been, you know, there's a lot of different landowners around. It could have been on a piece that I just don't have access to get to.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think that's one of the most it's not really frustrating. I wouldn't say it's frustrating is the word, but sometimes where you know a deer spending time and it's like, man, if I could just only go at like if I could just be 60 yards over on the fence,
Yeah.
deer's
Yeah.
dead. Like it's bulletproof. Like here's where the cutout in the bank is, and there they all go. And then it's like, I don't know. That sometimes that's just a frustration, which like I said, that's not the best way to say it, but it's like that's what you need to do. Like in that instance, like, well, his sheds could be right over here, and you could have walked over there and found them right away.
And there was, you know, I don't know, 4 to 5 landowners that now we hunt, or no, we don't let anybody hunt, kind of thing too. So on those pieces are maybe where he was staying, and that was just a piece of the puzzle that I was missing.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So then, as 2022 comes around, that is just so ironic and hilarious that he shows up the day you end up notching a tag. I mean, Ohio's a $1 state, so you're done. And then
I was done.
the day you not. So if you had you didn't kill the non-typical on the 4th. He shows up on the 4th. Are you glad it worked out the way it did, or is it a situation where like, man, I wish I could have chased Woody in 2021?
No, I'm glad it worked out the way that it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, now looking back on that, yeah. I never thought about that until you just said that, but yeah, I think it all worked out for a reason for sure.
Yeah.
Because I think there was a lot of things I learned from this year. Because let me tell you, There's a lot of highs and lows this year. A ton.
Well, talk about some of those things that you learned or adjustments that you made that maybe you hadn't done in the past or to that level of efficiency.
Well, I think one thing is like you don't own any of this ground. It's just permission pieces and stuff like that. You always got to be thinking about the things that landowners can be doing.
Yeah.
From, you go to plan, to hunt that evening and they decide to go cut wood.
Yep.
Or now they're going to go pick beans or they're going to go plow the fields or they're going to go, maybe they're just going to go buzz around on the side by side at prime time. Because all those things happen this year. And it was, on the, there was times I felt like, man, tonight's the night, like based off of what I seen yesterday, I'd make a move, get in there, prime time would roll around and here come a piece of farm equipment. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Tonight, really? And yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to, these tractors don't bother these deer as much, but I also think there's part of that too, of like, it's all situational. Like if they're getting ready to come out and all of a sudden you, the farmer, are getting ready to come into that field at the same time kind of thing, that shuts it off till, yeah. And so I dealt with a lot of that, a lot of, just a lot of different things. And just the area too, there's a lot of, development that's taking place. Pieces are selling, they're getting developed. A lot of surveying going on. So there's all those things that are starting to, that factor into, moves that you make. Maybe the deer could be staying on a piece that you don't have access to, but they're getting ready to develop it and surveyors in there and blowing him out. And that happened a couple times.
Really?
Yep. And he'd go and he'd be missing, I wouldn't know where they were, where he was at. So
that's the thing too, that I think just the randomness that can go into a deer season is something you could just never, ever, ever predict. I mean, for instance, it's hard to find a big deer that you want to hunt. Okay, great. Now you're on them. Okay, well, then all the randomness X factor that comes apart with that just obviously made it much more challenging for you. Well, like you can't account for that. You could never account for that.
No, and like going through the summer, like I started getting pictures of him during the summer, and I was getting pictures of him like every single night. And it was just, but he was staying on the big farm. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. But just as a backup on the other two pieces that I had, I'm like, I'm going to put my food plot and everything over there too, just in case he does a shift. So, and have everything over there kind of ready. And, just have some trees prepped and stuff like that. Cause I don't like to leave a lot of stands out because, just this year, like I jumped in a couple stands that I left out for like a year or two and they're like half grown into the tree already kind of deal, So I'd rather just bounce around and just stay unpredictable to all the deer, not just the deer I'm hunting, but all the deer that are on, does, especially does. And they're the worst. And when you become predictable, like they come in there looking for you.
Yeah.
So I prepped that whole thing down there too. And was like, just in case that he relocated or whatever. And then like throughout the summer, like I was laying in the bean fields at least once or twice a week and just shot some awesome velvet footage of him and him and some other bucks and stuff like that throughout the whole summer. A buddy of mine was also doing the same thing. He shot some just unbelievable footage and some beautiful pictures of him. And so he was there and staying right in that area. But like 2 weeks leading into season, I got into this old barn on the property that I hunt. and I could get up in this barn and open this top door, and I could see the whole bean field where he'd been feeding. And I could get up there and with a spotting scope and binoculars. And man, for 2 weeks, like almost every single night, I was just up there glued to everything that he was doing. And I'm like, man, I think I can kill this deer opening week.
Yeah.
If I have the win, I think on a couple different trees, I could kill this buck. And then on the second night of season, I couldn't hunt the first night at all. So I glassed in the morning, glassed in the evening, glassed the next morning, and then went in on the second night of season and hung a stand, hung a 1.0 and a fence row in a tree where he'd been crossing and going down this little waterway. And I'm like, man, if the wind just stays west most of the night, I said, I think I can kill this deer. He came out, he was coming across the field just like I hoped. And I don't know why, all of a sudden he just turned and started to walk in behind me. And I'm like, oh man. So I had to shoot behind me and came to full draw. I needed him to take 2 or 3 more steps. Wind shifted and he winded me.
Oh man.
And he cracked me and he just froze. And I thought he might get stupid enough to maybe take those couple more steps just to get that little bit more of me kind of thing. And that's all I needed. And I could let one go. He never moved until he ran. And when he ran like I shot at him. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just made this way harder.
Right.
And that is from that point moving forward, that is exactly what it became.
Yeah, man. Usually you don't get multiple opportunities. And then when you get busted, man, that sucks. It's not like he didn't know what happened. He knew exactly from the sense of it.
He got a full nose of me, which was, I almost would have rather him seen me somewhere than got that big nose of me, because now he's just got your scent.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, he's got you. So
that was the second day of season?
Second day of season.
When was the next time you saw him?
Seen him. I backed off of hunting at that point. I said, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to go back to glassing. And glassed for like 3 evenings in a row. Didn't see him on the 4th evening. I seen him come out a very last light at a completely different spot. And I was like, So then I went the following evening and set up where he came out, and he came out that night at a completely different spot.
Oh boy.
So I'm like, there's so many theories on this wind and how the deer use the wind and everything else. But you know how many times I've seen that buck walk with the wind at his butt?
Interesting. So what's your thoughts on it? They just do whatever they need to do?
I just think it's all situational on where they bed as far as what they can see as they move. I don't get me wrong. I've killed a lot of bucks too on that edge wind and stuff like that. I definitely think there's a lot of truth to that. But I also think it's also based upon the individual animal and what they like to do based off of the terrain that they're in. And like, this is all like flat farmland with fence rows and small little woodlots and stuff like that. And I don't know how many times I played that deer. Like, I'm like, you know what? I've seen him come out of over here. He's probably going to bed in there because the wind's going to be favorable for him, so on and so forth. And he comes out of a completely different spot with the wind right at his butt. So he's covered his back trail on danger, but he's watching out in front of it the whole time.
Yeah. That's just exactly what I was going to ask. If he's just walking where he was looking all day with the scent to his back when he's bedded. I don't know, but That's the beauty, I guess, of chasing whitetails is you just don't. I don't know. Sometimes I think we make it too hard, and then sometimes I think it's extremely complex. And I haven't
Yep.
figured out which is what, and it's probably dependent on the deer and what your goals are too.
I haven't figured it out either.
Well, that makes me feel a lot better.
Nope. I'm still like, I think every year and every animal that you chase and everything, I think that's just all situational and just all like, you just got to put the pieces together and then put all that work into place and then cross your fingers a little bit too.
Yeah, so as things kind of progress, when did you ended up actually hanging a set for them again?
So after I seen that night, so then I bounced over to that side and didn't see him. Then I backed off again and I was like, maybe I'm just putting too much pressure on him now. And so now we're getting into like, mid-October or so. And I've got permission on another little piece. Literally like somebody's backyard that butted up against a piece that was on the main farm, but I could come through their yard and around their barn and stuff like that and slide into this pine tree that overlooked this thicket and catch them coming back into that thicket to bed. And I thought, you know what? They're out there in those wide open fields every morning eating on his beans and everything else. I'm like, maybe if I make this play here, like there's no like it's a safe play. And it's a play of, I can slip in there in the morning, hunt him, and hopes to catch him coming back in there. And he liked to bed over in that one little section. There were some pine trees over there, and he liked to kind of hang in there a little bit. So we got that new .75 stand that we came out with. I hung that in a pine tree, like maybe a stick off the ground. But it was like, boy, when you cut those branches and then you place them all under around your stand, and you kind of brush yourself in, like you're like bulletproof in that thing, especially on a dead any south wind. I was like bulletproof in that. And I went in there, hunted him a couple different mornings when I had the wind, and thought I seen him one morning, like right at first light. I still to this day, I'm not 100% sure if that was him, but I thought maybe it was. The wind was switching. So now I jumped over onto the other side of the pines, and which was right on the field edge for an evening hunt. Now we're getting into like, it's probably October 20th or so now. I mean, I've just been bouncing everywhere. I mean, I'm just like a professional tree trimmer at this point. And so I jumped over the other side, and when I got up there, and well, I couldn't see them from the ground, but when I got up in the tree, I could see two big massive rubs back in those pines, and I was like, man, I think this is the right tree. Well, I seen some does, stuff like that. Right at last light, I was getting ready to get down. I couldn't see my pin if I wanted to. And I hear something coming, and I'm like, man, it's a deer. I know it's a deer. So I sat back down, and he came and walked directly underneath me and came out right. There wasn't even really a trail there. And I had some limbs that one fell that kind of blocked maybe a little spot where, and he like pushed his way through that, I guess, is the only thing that I couldn't see directly down from me. It was too dark. But when he got out into the field, then I could see him, and I was like, but him. And I was using my binoculars and I was watching him, and he got out there and he acted like he knew something was up. And I was like, and I had the wind. I mean, the wind was perfect, and it was a 15-mile-an-hour wind that night. So
pretty steady.
He wasn't going to get me. And I'm up in a pine tree, and I was way high in that pine tree, because being on a field edge, I was like, I don't want to be low because there's going to be a lot of does out here and stuff. So I was probably, 20, 25 foot up in that thing.
Mhm.
And he just, I don't know, from his body language, I felt like he just knew something was up. And then he went missing for like 4 days after that, 4 or 5 days. He was like MIA again. And I'm like, gosh, I'm like, what the heck? Like, I felt like that was even a safe play. It's an easy in and out even.
Mhm.
Even my buddy that owns the farm, he was like, I, I, he texted me is what it was. He said, you still in the tree? Because my truck was at his house.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah, I'm stuck. I said, I think he's out here in the field. And he said, I'll just come pick you up on the side by side or the tractor.
Mhm.
And he was like, and then he won't think anything of it. I'm like, yes, please do. And so he came out, picked me up, and then he went missing for a while. And it was about 4 or 5 days, showed back up on camera, I had a real good idea of what he might be doing and where he might be trying to get into, because now we're into late October. And I thought, and there's a bunch of does over there. And I thought, well, maybe this would be an easy in the morning. And maybe I can catch him in there harassing does and maybe coming either in or out of that spot right there.
Mhm.
I get in there in the morning. I had the tree already prepped, so I didn't have to do anything, but I just had to go in there and throw that setup. And so I went in there, hung 1.0 in there, and had him coming across the field right at first light, coming right across the field. It's coming right in. I'm like, man, if he takes this trail right here, it's going to be a 15-yard shot. And a liquid lime truck pulled into
Oh my
the farm
god. Uh-huh.
and blew him out of the field.
That is
And
bad
then,
luck.
yeah, and they continued to put liquid lime down for 3 straight days.
Oh my gosh.
It was non-stop in there. And I mean, and it was semi after semi coming in there and just nonstop. And I thought, man, I cannot catch a break on this thing. So I got frustrated with the whole situation. And I was talking to Heath Cisco, and I said, you going out to Illinois anytime? He's like, I'm getting ready to go. It was late October. I said, I'm coming too. I said, I just got to mentally get away
Uh-huh.
um, from this and, go chase some different deer or something. So that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Change the
So
scenery.
I went out there, hunted for like a long weekend for like 3 or 4 days. But it was super warm.
Yeah.
We didn't see squat. We struggled. Him and I both had numerous sets of getting skunked.
Mhm. Weird time of year to get skunked too.
Yes. Like
Very
nothing. It
rare.
was like Halloween and everything like right in there. And it was like a ghost town.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. That was a weird time. You were either on them or you weren't. It's kind of what the consensus was. Just talking to other people, but um, you ended up tagging deer in Illinois too, right? Was on a different trip though?
yeah, I was on a different trip. I came back, got caught up on some work stuff and stuff like that. And was trying to Woody was kind of missing a little bit still. Wasn't seeing him like much on cameras or anything. So I think that maybe I set like a couple observation stands,
Hmm.
but I never seen him. Um, and he was just kind of MIA. And there was so much activity and stuff like that going on back there because right before that it was the beans got picked, and then the liquid lime was going down and all that. So it was just I didn't know what to do really,
Hmm.
and I was trying to relocate him, but I couldn't figure out where he was at. And my buddy who owns across the street over there, he was tagged out at that point, and like I probably drove him crazy because every day as soon as I get up in the morning, I check my trail cameras and I text him and like, hey, was Woody on you last night? Oh, hold on, let me check. And and he wouldn't be. So I'm like, well, I don't know where he's at. So then I was trying to relocating and trying to figure out where the heck he was. So I started thinking like maybe he was on a couple different other properties around.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that were, that was south of me. So I started knocking on doors, trying to get permission, and which was interesting because one of the doors I knocked on, um, man, this guy had ripped me a new one for
Before.
bothering him and this and that. And I mean, he was cussing at me and everything else. Like, I, I mean, it started making me mad the way that
He
this
was
guy
handling it.
was. So got permission on another small piece, got a maybe from another person that called me a couple days later and said, "Yeah, we don't care,
Mhm.
but we do a little. We do have a family member that does a little bit of gun hunting."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Yep, whatever. No, doesn't matter to me." And so I went back to Illinois. I seen a big cold front coming because I couldn't figure out where he was at. I was bouncing around. I just wasn't seeing him, and I
Mhm.
was playing it safe, just more or less observation sets
Mhm.
and trying to watch cameras. And then even on the nights that I didn't hunt, I was in my truck just driving for that last hour or so.
Mhm.
Went to Illinois because I seen a big cold front, and I mean, I got out there on a day of it was like 70 the day I got out there. I got a lot of scouting done, got some stands hung in place for what was coming. Man, I nailed it. I mean, I had bucks. It was like a completely different farm. It was I went from like getting skunked to seeing like 20 or 30 deer a set. And it was just, I mean, I was just covered up. I was seeing good ones like every day
Mhm.
that I was out there. And then on um probably my third or fourth day out there, I had a real big one at 28 yards one day, and he was following a doe fawn and he was coming straight at me. And I was set up over a water hole that a ton of deer had been hitting. It was just ruts. It was ruts that were made by a logger,
Water just held up in it.
and water held up in it. And when I was scouting, there was two or three big rubs right there, but there was tracks everywhere around it. And so I set up thinking, well, I mean, many deer that are coming through here, like the bucks know that too, that the does are coming in here, and it's the middle of November, so I might as well try it. And I had a giant pushing a little doe fawn right up to it, and for whatever reason, I don't know why he did this, and then he just made a right hand turn and started veering off. She came to the base of my tree,
Wow.
and he veered off of her, and I drew, and I had just had there was nowhere to squeeze an arrow, and then the next day, um, at 1 o'clock in the day, I said all day. At 1 o'clock during the day, I had a buck come up the ridge, and I put the wrong pin on him, and hit him high through the tenderloin. I know everybody's not supposed to talk about ones that they hit or miss or whatever, but
It happens.
if you bow hunt, that's the realistic side of this.
Uh-huh.
But um, I hit that deer high. I knew it as soon as I did it too.
Mhm.
I knew it as soon as I hit that sucker. I was like, dang, that is not going to kill that buck.
Uh-huh.
And I watched him. He ran off. Um, I turned around and I sat down, and the buck that I ended up killing on the trip was standing at 10 yards in front of me, smelling a tree that I trimmed for a shooting line. I got it all on video, 10 yards in front of me. And I'm like, dang, I'm like, that's the shot I want. now he just shot this one, and I wasn't sure, like I was like, well, I gotta still
Do your due
investigate,
diligence. Yeah.
Yep. So I was like, I just had to sit there and watch him. So he left out of there, and then
Did he bust
um,
out or did he just go about his day?
he just went about his day.
Uh-huh.
And then about that time that I was getting ready to get down to go over there to look at my arrow and stuff like that, the one that I had at 28 yards a few days prior to that, he come up the other side and winded me and cracked me and getting down. So that all happened between 1 and 2 o'clock.
Something to be said about that.
Yep, it was red hot during that little time frame there.
Uh-huh.
So I got down, looked at my arrow. It looked like crap. There wasn't even hardly blood on the fletches at all. Tried to track him. I never found a drop of blood on the ground anywhere. And after a couple hours of doing that, I was completely frustrated with the whole situation and went back and shot my bow for about half an hour or so out of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And then I knew the wind was going to switch in the morning. I had a stand that I'd hung. The would have been the first or second day I was there, and I'd relocated it. I'd hunted it, and then moved it over 40 or 50 yards, and it was just sitting there. I was waiting for the wind to switch. So the next morning I got up and got in there. And when I got in there, I was covered up in deer the whole morning. It was just in a big bottleneck. And I knew with it being like November 10th or whatever it was, November 10th or 12th, I knew they're just going to be cruising everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so the buck that was smelling my tree the day before comes through one trail too far out for me to get a shot at. Pretty soon, I turned the camera around, was like talking about that deer, talking about the day before. I seen some does coming, and I heard a big loud grunt. And I remember even saying to the camera, I was like, I think that deer's coming back. And I turned the camera back around. He came pushing those does, and I shot him, and he ran about 150 yards.
Tipped over.
Yep. So nice big 10.
Mm-hmm.
Probably like 145, 150 inch deer.
Mm-hmm.
So then, but in between that time, in the last few days, on one of those new pieces that I got pictures of Woody, that I got access to, I started getting pictures of Woody like crazy.
You think there's a hot doe in there?
I don't know if there was a hot doe or what, but I was getting broad daylight pictures of him. I mean, he was red hot in there. So I got my deer all taken care of, everything else, got back and got after him right away. And I think the second time I hunted that set, I seen him, but he was way out and he was looking for a doe. He come out with his nose to the ground and he was just running all over like he lost her or something like that. But he was like 150, 200 yards away. And it was on the neighbor's property, so there was just nothing I could do to get over there because they gun hunt that over there, and I had asked them, but they're like, "No, we gun hunt it, and we'd like to save it for gun."
Mm-hmm.
So then I hunted that tree probably a good bit because it was like a real like quick, easy, like in and out. And there wasn't a lot of damage to be done to get in and out of that particular spot. And I got pictures of him in the morning. I went in there, jumped in the tree. He came out early on a doe, followed the doe all the way across the field. It went down, fed through the field. Then there was another group of does. He kind of checked those other does out, and the doe that he was with she walked straight at me, and I didn't know if he was going to go with those other does or what he was going to do. And he followed that doe, and he came all the way into me. And he they were facing me for the longest time, and I wasn't very high in a tree either. Like to the point where if I stood up, I felt like I was going to get silhouetted. So I had to stay seated the whole time and just stay in that crotch of that tree. And I had one shooting lane over there, and I was worried about the angle. I was worried that they were just gonna. I wasn't gonna get shot because it's just the angle of it. So she made that turn and went through that shooting lane, and I was like, oh, he's gonna do the same. And when he did, and he came through there, he heard me draw,
Mm.
and he looked right up at me.
Jeez.
He nailed me, and I shot over his back
Oh man.
at 26 yards.
Oh man. Did you bone the shot, or do you think he reacted, or a combination of both?
Yeah, he definitely reacted, but I screwed the shot up,
Uh-huh.
and but I didn't. So going back, I'm like, why'd I hit that one high in Illinois? You know, even the buck that I shot, I hit high,
Mhm.
and and now to shoot high again. So I changed my sight out last year and started using a 5-pin sight because I went on an elk hunt. I wanted that. I didn't want to have a dial.
Mhm.
I had a 1-pin dial pin. That's what I used for the last 10 years, and I changed it out. And and this is my excuse anyways. So
Okay.
I would go, and it's stupid on my part than what I was doing than the way I was practicing. Every day when I practice in the backyard, so I have a 20 that's green, a 30 that's red, and a 40 that's green. I would go into the backyard every single day, even all through the summer, and I'd only shoot that 40-yard pin all the time. That's all I was practicing because I was like, well, if I can kill at 40, 30 and
20.
20 is going to be easy, right?
Yeah.
So I think what I was doing, the heat of the moment, and I, I think I was just getting caught up in the heat of the moment, and I was pulling back and instinctively going to the 40
I mean,
and
it makes
using the 40
yeah.
pin.
Well,
That's the only thing I can figure out.
yeah.
And but I blew it. And I shot right over him. He ran across the field with that doe, and they stopped. And she was just walking at that point, and he started dogging her again after that. Then he stopped, and he turns in my direction and just stares for a while.
Uh-huh.
Then he goes back to dogging her. Then they go down into the woods. And then a little bit later, like 10 minutes later, because I'm just sitting there like, I was
Distraught.
just so,
I'm so
yeah,
frustrated.
like this is the moment I've been waiting for. And like I screwed it all up kind of
Yeah.
deal. And I'm like, he come back out all the way across the other side of the field, and he was chasing her around or whatever. And soon as they went into that other thicket over there, I just got out of there. And I went back home and was shooting my bow. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what the heck am I doing? And it didn't dawn on me till about 1:30 that night. I got up to take a leak. I said, I know what I'm doing. I know. I got up the next morning and put my old sight on and just shot that and just sighted that thing in and just pounded arrows. And then he disappeared again. He disappeared off of everything I had access to. I couldn't find him. So I was just, I didn't know what to do. And so um I was the night before, so the evening before I killed him, my farmer buddy that gives me permission to hunt the big farm, he said, hey, there's a buck hit by a car over here. And I was like, oh God, are you serious? I said, hold on, I'm coming. So I got over there, we get over there, and I asked the guy, I was like, was it a doe or a buck? Like, and he was like, it was a buck. I was like, was it a big buck? He's like, I don't know. It looked big to me. I'm not a hunter or whatever. So we went and looked, and we never found that deer. So this is how I got lucky. The next morning, I'm getting ready to go to work, I pull into the farm and I'm going to pull back the lane. And I was going to go just look in the fields to see what buck it was. Cause there was, I don't know, there's 5, 6 other bucks around too. And a couple of them were, most people would think they're big. They were 120 to 140-inch deer.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not a hunter. Those are big bucks. And so I'm like, man, I got to know. And I pull in and I see a deer bedded next to the tree that I got winded out of on the second day. So I threw my binos on him, and it was Woody.
Oh man!
And I'm like, what the heck is he doing? Like, why is he bedded right there? Kind of deal. And I'm sitting there watching it. So then I pull out my phone and I look, and it's the second day of gun season. And I look on my phone and I'm like, I got the win. And to be honest with you, even if I screwed up, I put him on the other pieces that I got a better chance to killing him on now. Because now at this point, my farm, like on the big farm, he's plowed all the fields. All the fields are plowed.
Just ghost town.
Yeah, it's good. There's nothing in there. So, I'm like, you know what? Who cares? What do I have to lose? I put my stuff on, grab my bow, binos, binoculars, whatever, and I started easing down that fence row and crawled to probably 60 or 70 yards of him, and then realized he had a doe with him. I didn't know he had a doe with him for the longest time. I couldn't see her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh God, but they're both facing away from me. And then the wind, they are on a fence row that runs east to west. The wind is blowing dead south. So it's blowing out into the plowed field. So I just kept easing, and I got within like 28 yards. And I didn't. I was like, God, this is like I've never shot a deer off the ground ever in my life.
Uh-huh.
And so I was ranging him. He's at 28 yards, and I was like, you know what? It's now or never. So I shot him laying in his bed.
Oh man.
Yep. So
Dang.
that's how I ended up finally getting him.
This locked on a doe and able to creep in.
Yep. Just got lucky.
So he was bedded down when you shot him too with the arrow?
He was in his bed.
Wow.
And I had one little, there was a bunch of there was some tall grass. There was some of my branches that I trimmed from that tree that were blocking me a couple times.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Well, I think there's some lessons there. Persistence kills big deer. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yep. There was no skill involved in this, man.
Yeah. No, to get that many opportunities takes some wits. This is something that I'm kind of recognizing do you think there's benefits to hunting a specific buck rather than hunting a specific class of deer? If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think I know that every single specific buck has a different attitude, demeanor, tendencies, all those things that you got to factor in of when you're hunting them and how you're gonna go about hunting them. I've hunted deer that were super aggressive, like just rip up the whole place and run other deer off and stuff like that. Like if you see a deer like that in a field or something like that, or in a thicket, whatever, you might be able to call them in just because of their attitude. And I've had other deer that were giants that were just like docile and like
timid.
Just wanted to be by themselves. They're timid. And I'm like, man, you have the body and the headgear to go at it with anybody, but it's just, I mean, we know people that are like this, that are the same way. I know I got, everybody's got a buddy that's just a little guy that he'd fight everybody in the bar. Yep. And then you got another buddy that's a giant that could destroy everybody in the bar that would, he wants to buy everybody drinks in there.
Yeah, that's so true. So you think by just being fanatical with a specific deer may allow you more opportunity than just hunting this terrain feature for this specific buck, and I'm just gonna do some time. It's kind of I think what most people think.
Yeah, I mean, and I know a lot of guys that like are just just rut hunters, and that's what they key in on it. And I hunt the rut and love the rut. It's exciting and it's fun and stuff like that. But it's a big crapshoot too, because one hot doe, you could be hunting a, say you're hunting a big farm, and say it's a 400-acre farm, but it's broke up into 4 sections. And in one section there's a couple hot does over there. The other 3 parts of that farm could be as dead as it could be, and you could slide over there and get into that place, and it could be the best hunts of your life, because of the situation.
Yeah, when it's hot, and when it's not, you're wondering what the
Yeah,
heck's going on. I mean, that's for
yeah,
sure.
sure.
Everyone's been there. Um, so I guess let's say you've tagged buck in Illinois, in Ohio, and then there's someone like me right now that still has a tag in their pocket.
Hmm.
What would you tell me, and what would you tell other folks with a tag in their pocket right now? It's December 6th.
Um, and just bow hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I would say maybe be patient a little bit. Let some of these gun seasons, kind of wind down a little bit, and then from there maybe just start to key in on some of those food sources. And it doesn't have to be like, and it could be maybe there was a tree that fell into the bean field and he couldn't pick those beans, or maybe there's a bunch of weeds right there in that little section and he didn't pick those beans. Like those are all things to key in on. Um, those honey locust pods, man, those things, I'm telling you, late season, those things are like crack to those deer. They love those things. I
Mhm.
mean, if you have those on your farm or whatever, wherever you're hunting, like I would key in, but it all becomes, it's all food at this point, and it's all um primarily just evening hunts.
Yeah.
Um I it just the problem with the morning hunts this time of the year, and I used to do it, but I just screwed up a lot of spots by doing it just because I wanted to hunt all the time.
Yeah.
But man, you just educate them so quick and just make it so much harder for yourself. But if you are going to hunt a morning, you know, find those places that they're feeding heavily on and stuff like that. And I would kind of play the moon a little bit, you
Mm.
know, um, let that moon, like if it's a heavy, you know, they're feeding in the morning or something like that, they're going to get back to the beds late. Like, maybe that's go in and do a hang and hunt. Like, now they're probably not got a bed very far from the food. So your entry and exits have to be really thought
Perfect.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes for evenings too. Like if
Mhm.
you want to get multiple sets even out of an evening stand, like you gotta have a plan in place of like how the heck you're gonna get in and out of there because say if you're hunting a food source, maybe a cut cornfield or whatever it might be, like now you went in there to hunt and you got 20, 30 does and small bucks out there, but your buck never showed up. Now you got to get down.
Yeah.
It's a
You get
have a
like two
plan.
you get like 2 cracks at that. Which is really tough to predict when that buck's gonna get out there in daylight and be in range with archery equipment. And
Yep.
I mean, I've screwed up so many times like that, just because the entry and exit isn't there, but you still have to go. That's the best opportunity, but you only get 1 or 2 tries.
Yeah. I mean, and at that point, it's like, I mean, you got to try. I mean, what are you going to do? Just sit back and like, you
Watch the
know,
season go away.
yeah, like you got to try. And if you screw it up, you screw it up. I mean, I've screwed up a lot of deer. I mean, like probably more than I'd like to admit over the years.
Yeah.
But you have to try stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think that's Congratulations on a great year, and it was fun to kind of follow along just the wild goose chase, because that seems what quite often a lot of these deer end up being on these smaller parcels and permission. It is a wild
Yep.
goose chase. I mean, there's no way to dress it up. But to put your tag around the specific deer you're chasing is pretty awesome. And yeah, man. Anything else here today? I want to be respectful of your time.
Um, I don't know. Probably the biggest thing is just, just being persistent. I'm not going to say like, I'm some hunter that's better than anybody or anything I mean, there's a lot of really, really
Yeah.
good hunters out there. And maybe other guys could have got it done quicker than I could have, but I'm persistent.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, I do think that you're crazy if you think an animal is going to beat you. It, you know, I, I always think that it's just an animal. You're going to tell me that animal is going to beat me. Like the things that I'm doing are, I feel like, a little more methodical, where they're doing things more instinctive. And I just got to think a little bit ahead of and trying to play that instinctive move of theirs out before they do it.
Yeah.
And that's all we're trying to do at the end of the day.
That's a fantastic point. We as humans have the ability to reason, and
Yep.
animals do not.
Yep.
And we got thumbs. So, I mean, we really have the
That's
advantage
true.
here.
Yeah.
No, well, I really appreciate it, Justin. It's always good to catch up. I would say for anything you want to plug here for people can find you. Did you self film that spawn stock or no?
No, I
I
didn't.
was gonna say that'd be pretty
Nope.
challenging.
I got tons of encounters and stuff like that. I got my miss
Mhm.
on video. I got my full draw on video. I got all of that. That morning that wasn't planned. I was going to work.
Right.
I was late for work. I'll just say that. Because soon as
100%.
I shot that deer and the whole thing went down and everything else, I had to get on a Teams call for a project that we're doing right now in my truck. So
They're probably used to it with you. I mean, that's par for the course.
my boss was busting my chops. He was like, "Well, he said in that meeting, he said, well, if you're a halfway decent hunter, you'd have your deer already. We wouldn't." And something along those lines. And I said, "I just shot him this morning." He's like, "Did you really?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Send me a picture." I'm like, "I haven't found him yet. I'm on a call with you guys."
Yeah. That's hilarious. No, that's funny. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. Where can people find you?
You can find me anything Lone Wolf Custom Gear, Whitetail Addictions, or just like on my Instagram page at Mason's Dad 1975.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Justin. I'm always excited to follow along with your season, and have to catch up again soon.
Yeah, thanks, man.